And even just with like beats too, like I know when I used to send beats around to different artists and like you were saying, like the managers would prefer it comes through them, which I kind of don't really understand. Like, why would I send beats to a manager?
Say it again. Why am I sending beats to a manager?
Peace, what's going down? It's the Music Entrepreneur Club podcast. My name is DJ Payne. I'm joined by the usual suspects, Aaron Knight and Dame Ritter. But today we have a special guest. We haven't had a special guest, I don't think, since DJ Z. So we welcome her.
We have Brandon.
Oh, damn, you're right, Brandon. I thought he was before. Yeah. Okay. So it's a rare pleasure to have a special guest. And today we have that. So I'd like to introduce the MEC verse to Yan Snead. She works at Pandora, and I know I'm completely oversimplifying her role in the music business, so I will let her speak for herself before I further butcher her resume.
Thank you. Hey everybody, I'm Yan Snead. I'm currently the R&B programmer at Pandora. Prior to working here, I've been here for like a year now. I was doing a lot of independent A&R and management work on the indie side. And yeah, to be honest, I don't really like huge introductions, so I don't really have much to say beyond that. But yeah, I'm a super big advocate for the independent artists and been doing this for over 8 years. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
And make sure everyone follows her on Twitter. I know we normally do this at the end, but if in case you don't get to the end of this podcast, follow her on Twitter at Yan Snead. I know that I've been following her for a minute. This is the first time I think we've got a chance to actually have a conversation. So I'm excited about it. But this connection has started because I think I put out a tweet that said that was talking to people that would want to talk to artists to go through the managers. So if you've been asked to go through a manager, then go through the manager. Don't try to circumvent a manager and go straight to the artist. So we're going to be talking about managers because we're always on artists' head. We're always on the producers' heads. So today we want to talk to managers so that they can be better at their roles. However, before we jump into management, there's a tweet you put out yesterday, Yan. I just want to talk about it briefly. You said a lot of what's going wrong with music today is entitled gross fans. Gross fans.
Man.
What's that about?
So it actually was sparked by everything that happened with Kehlani. I believe she was doing a show in the UK. They were escorting her out after her performance, and someone pulled her underwear to the side and tried to grope her. I'm not sure if they actually did, but either way, it's still like very disgusting. And I just feel like that's probably one of hundreds of cases that women don't even speak on because it's just embarrassing to talk about. And it's just like a lot of the times we don't even want to kind of get in that mix of like speaking on those things just because it's just really private to us. And we don't really want to give people that inside scoop to have their opinions on it or say whatever they have to say. Because a lot of times it's not actually positive. Like you'd be surprised women come out with that kind of stuff and it's not really support that they get. It's just like, you don't have to be a victim and blah, blah, blah. That's besides the point. I hope she's healing because that's really crazy. But outside of that, I just feel like between demanding releases on a consistent basis to like the song could be out yesterday and then a week later it's like, when are we getting another project? Like, bro, like, did you listen to the song? Mm-hmm. Then it's that. Then it's just like we demand these kind of performances, or like with Steve Lacy, they're throwing stuff on stage, like shoes on stage at that. I just feel like, granted, I'm sure this has been happening for decades, but now that we have social media, we're seeing it on a consistent basis and it's in our face. But it's just like, I just feel that with social media and the prevalence of it, fans have just become so entitled to these artists. And it's just like, bro, like if y'all wonder why the music is the way it is, or they're not coming out to do shows, or they're not doing like the one-on-ones like they used to do, is because y'all are trash as fans. So it's like, why would they want to engage with y'all?
Can I pick up on this? I know this isn't part of our plan, but Yan brought it up and she's the guest of honor. So I'm just kind of going with what she projects. I just wanted to share a screenshot because I feel like this whole conversation about entitled fans doesn't just affect artists. I think there's a lot of entitlement across the board. And I think we have an especially appropriate panel for this, given that, with you, Dame, right? Like there's this interesting connection between artists that you've worked with. Same with you, Aaron. We talked about this recently, producers and artists that become disgruntled with the two of you and with me. I'm going to use myself as an example, and I'm sure Yan has similar stories. And because they become disgruntled, instead of just keeping that anger to themselves, they go straight to the internet and create these narratives and start trying to affect the reputations of the person who they claim wronged them, when in fact all the person was doing was protecting their energy, saying no, being totally reasonable, and these people are so entitled that that's the narrative they spin. The problem is, once that narrative is spun enough time, one person on the internet can do a lot of damage. I mean, one fan in person, we talked last week. I don't know if it seems like Yan just knows what we talk about already. I don't think, if you watched last week's episode, we were talking about the Steve Lacy situation. And I recounted a story in which a fan felt entitled to a handshake on stage and ended up, because the artist was busy doing their set and the handshake grabbing dude was bothering him, it spiraled into him almost killing the artist by throwing a bottle on stage and hitting him in the head. So that's the type of stuff that I think we can expand the conversation to. But I just want to show you a screenshot, because I do feel like at times all of us have reputations for being, I don't know, unapproachable and this and that. And I think for different reasons, because different people create these narratives. But in this situation, I want people to know, who are watching this, that you don't have to believe the narratives. Interact with people yourselves, unless it's a terrible narrative and there's like some crazy pattern. But a lot of people in the music business have these unfair narratives. So like, this guy reached out, asked me basically to teach him how to become a producer all over again. I'm sorry, I don't have time for that. So I just didn't reply. And then I get this message last week. I humbly asked you for your advice on how I could get back in the game, which is basically like me creating an entire plan for this person. Like, this would be hours of my time analyzing what he's done, what he's going to do, what he needs to do. It's a lot of work. Anyway, it seems that you completely ignored me. That's disrespectful and disappointing. No matter, you be cool. Oh, and keep that same energy. You'll need it. So there's like some kind of vague thread in there. I don't know what that's about, but this is the type of thing where I think is happening pretty often, and especially within the artist manager relationship between collaborators. And the unfortunate result, I think, is whoever has the jump on the other person. Like Hobson had the jump on Dame. He recorded a diss record talking about Dame wants to turn Funk Volume into a shake weight commercial, and everyone was like, oh, that's so crazy. But it wasn't true, and it's a kind of silly thing to say. Or like the producer that could go online and say, Aaron tried to take our rights, when in reality she was offering a reasonable fee and a 20% master split. So I don't know, Yan, do you have that kind of experience with entitlement, especially when you were working with artists more directly?
It's funny because I actually literally have a similar kind of story with this manager team. Well, it wasn't even a team, it was a manager and an artist. And I don't really say much about it, because similar to what you just said, I feel like she would take the opportunity to just get online and spin the story in her favor, like I did something wrong. But essentially they had brought me and my partner on. I was doing artist development and marketing. They brought us on to help this artist with her rollouts and releases, and they wanted me to help her put records together. So once we started working with her for like a month, everything was going super well. Like, she went viral within that time period. And that was her first time going viral. And then we were just like, all right, we should circle back to the conversation of contracts. Because I don't want to work for free. Like, I'm tired of working for free. My entire career in music thus far until Pandora has been doing shit for free and then not getting credit for it and then regretting it later. And so when we talked about contracts, suddenly it becomes, well, you're not part of the management team. You're just a contractor. Like, no, that's not it's been team this whole time, management team, and now suddenly we're contracting. Like, so if we're contracting, where's the money coming from? Because she doesn't have a budget. So that became a conversation of like, well, when she gets signed, and then there's a, what's it called, a advance, and your contract fee can come out of the advance, and it's just like, so now essentially you're trying to use me to get her signed, and then you decide then what that advance fee is going to be. Like, it just sounded like a bunch of bullshit, frankly. And I personally just feel like it was more so just greed, because there was this, and I quote her, she was saying like, well, within a team, there's one manager and everybody works under them. And it's just like, it's not really how this works, but you got it. And I just feel like she didn't want to cut up the splits any further beyond what she was already taking for anybody else. And it was just like, I mean, if you want her career to take off and you want to build a team around her, you have to understand that people are going to want splits. It's not just going to be you taking splits and then everybody else just works for free and gets tweeted, hey, this person works with me. Like, that's not sufficient. But yeah, it's just been interesting seeing after the fact how that played out. And it was just like, I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to like address it anywhere, because it was just like, I knew her character, and it eventually would have been like, well, she did X, Y, and Z, or she just spinning the narrative so that it just would seem like I was being difficult to work with, when really I just wanted to, like, I was demanding my value. Like, you want me to help you, then you're going to have to credit me and give me a split. Like, I'm not working for free anymore.
I'm sure as soon as you announced your Pandora role, they were like, yo, what's up? Da, 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 right?
The funny part is so when we finally had that conversation, because we ended up having an argument, it was another thing about it. Like, I just feel like the artist was too, like, she just didn't know a lot of what was going on. Because she just completely trusted her manager and didn't really look too deeply into what was happening on the back end. And I feel like because of that, when we finally all had to sit down, it just seemed like she was just clueless. And that ended up becoming an argument, because she's talking slick to me. And I'm just like, girl, like, this is what's happening. Like, I don't know what your manager's telling you, but this is what it is. So after that, it kind of just was real spicy, and I just deleted all of our meetings off the calendar, and that was it. Like, I haven't spoke to them since. I don't know what their thoughts about Pandora are. I don't honestly care.
You know what I think is so crazy about the artist manager relationship is that a lot of artists will get into a management relationship and then completely just fall back from anything related to their careers. Like, the second they have a management, it's like they revert back to being a kid. They're like, cool, my parents will handle it. And the parent is the manager. And it's definitely, number one, the wrong thing to do, because a manager's role isn't to do your work for you. It's not to, walk you into places and say, hey, this person is doing something, work with them. Like, the artist is supposed to be practicing their artistry. Mm-hmm. And I've seen this happen a million times. I'm sure that anyone else can speak to this more, but I see it often as a kind of predatory dynamic. If it's like an older person and a younger person, or like a male manager and a woman artist client, there's this weird dynamic often that grows where they really become controlling and really just want to usurp that artist's autonomy. And I saw it early on, like before I really had a production career, I was sending this local rapper beats all the time. I really wanted to work with him because he's amazingly talented. And I was sending him beats directly. And I was so excited to hear him rap over them. And finally he got back to me. He was like, you know what? My management says I can't work with any producers, because he was making his own beats. Is there a real justification for a manager to block their rapper from choosing which producers to work with? No, that's ridiculous. And then eventually he contacted me and was like, yeah, my manager was terrible. He was just not doing the right things. And I think that's kind of the theme of today, right, Dame? That when the manager...
Yeah, no, definitely want to just kind of talk. Well, just to go back to what Yan was saying really fast, because it was the irony of what her experience is like. They were telling her she was a contractor. The word is literally in that name. She had no contract. Like, you're saying I'm a contractor, but you're not giving me a contract that lays out how I'm supposed to be compensated. So that's pretty weird and funny, kind of funny at the same time. But yeah, so basically today I wanted to talk about just kind of some of the pet peeves that we have dealing with managers on this side in our current roles. We either as other managers, either working at Pandora, Aaron, you have a number of different roles, and I'm sure you've interacted with tons of managers in different capacities. And then Payne, as a producer, I'm sure you just talked about an experience working with managers. What are some of your guys' pet peeves, or some of the experiences that you've been through with managers that have just kind of, just turn you off, make you not want to do business with them, or just put a bad taste in your mouth? And anybody can start with just some of their biggest pet peeves working with managers.
I will say one of my biggest pet peeves working with male managers is the condescension. There's just this assumption that I am stupid, or that because I have a level-headed way of having a discussion, I'm just misinformed. So there's a ton of mansplaining. Like I had this very, very, very recently, one of the last producer deals I just closed for one of our bigger artists, Xavier Omar. And it was so bad based off of what happened to me. He decided not to work with the producer for at least a year moving forward. And it's a big producer. Like if I say his name right now, everybody on this call would know who it is. But it was like his manager was so condescending to me that Xavier was looking at the emails like, what's this dude's deal? So I completely got out of the emails and I just let Brandon start responding. And I'm not somebody who's in the place that's like, oh, I just have to show them I'm going to keep talking as a woman. I'm not putting myself in the line of fire for future women. I'm not the martyr anymore. I used to be that way. And I'd be like, I just got to show them women can do, I don't care anymore. I'm so sick of being under fire. Like, I'll just let Brandon will text me, hey, I'm going to send this, this, and this. What else do I need to say? I'm cool with that. But that is so consistent, is that men are condescending. Male managers assume that they have more experience, or that they've closed bigger deals, or because I'm not coming with a certain type of energy that they can just walk all over me. And the thing is, I'm not somebody who's going to raise my voice or be super like up in arms, but I'm going to be direct. I'm a very direct person. So men don't like that because they'll come for me and then I'll come back and be like, well, this is what we have and this is what we're going to do. That's just the terms. If you don't accept these terms, we can move on. And then it just turns into this whole like pissing battle, whatever. I was trying to be cool. We arrived at the terms, but it was because the lawyer also got involved. The lawyer was like, hey, we're not doing these. But it's like, why did it have to get there? Why did my business partner have to say something? And then our lawyer say something and you act completely differently. So that is a big pet peeve of mine. And then if you don't know something, I understand that this industry is a place where people fake it till they make it, but I don't think that there's any shame in asking a manager for clarity, right? So if one manager asks you for something and you don't know what that is, you can go Google it, but you could also be like, hey, I'm not completely familiar with that. I just had situation with Smino's manager. We were dealing with something else completely. Such a kind, shout out to Chris Classic, one of the best managers I've ever dealt with. He was like, well, in order to do X, Y, and Z, it wasn't for Smino. We're not working with him yet, but soon. He's like, X, Y, and Z needs to happen, da, 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 da. And I was like, hey, Chris, I actually have no idea what that is. Could you explain that to me? But I think as a young manager, 4 or 5 years in, I would have felt shame and felt like I had to go find out and I wouldn't have known and I might have given him the wrong answer. But he immediately was like, oh, that means this, this, and this. We need these things. Let's get on the phone and I can explain it more. So I won't pigeonhole all men and say all men do this thing, but it is consistent that men condescend women in this industry, but especially women managers. But at the same time, I will say one of my pet peeves is people feeling like they know stuff and not asking, and then making it a thing because they just didn't want to show that they didn't know it.
Right. Do you feel like men do this like consciously? You think they treat all women like this? Like consciously or unconsciously, or like are they aware of what they're doing?
So I think that it is to a degree unconscious because of the patriarchy. So it's like y'all are just preconditioned to feel like your voice matters more. That's just the way that it is, because your voice in most settings in the world matters more. So it's an unconscious bias, but my thought process is that it is to a degree conscious, because if you're examining your bias on a daily basis, or at least coming with the thought process that women, especially Black women, are the most fragile people in the room, let me approach this with that type of thought process, right? Like when you walk into a room with children, if you are a cursor, hopefully you don't really curse, right? Some people don't have that standard, but I am a cursor. When I walk into the room with children or my mother, I don't curse, right? So that's something in my head that I'm conscientiously bringing forward, that this is a privilege of mine that could be offensive to other people. Let me step back. So as much as I would like to say that it's unconscious and that men just don't know, it's like, if you at this point in your life don't know, then you have a problem. Like your desire to be first, or your desire to be heard, is way more important than you caring about other people. And again, some people don't hold that as a value, but I do. And granted, with my artist, this producer is major. He's huge. He's going to keep making money. But even for him to step back from somebody he's collaborated with so consistently because his producer, or because his manager was an asshole, I wonder, like, I think that there's a new wave of artists coming through the industry. Women are really up in the industry right now. The most successful artists, typically, it's been that way, but they're starting to acknowledge it, have women behind them. And my hope is that as other men say, hey, no, you have to treat her properly, no longer will I have to fight that battle, but now my artist presence or lack of presence will fight that battle for me. So that's my hope in this. But I don't think that men are conscientiously like, let me victimize this woman. But there's something in men that I feel like they feel, y'all feel challenged if an intelligent woman comes into the room. And I don't understand it. It's been my whole life that I've had men feel this odd threatening. And I'm like, I don't understand it, because I want to work together. My desire is for all of us to be great. And I had to become so intelligent because people wouldn't let me in or teach me anything. So it's like, by default, I'm an asset, but for some reason it seems to be intimidating. And so I'm not shying away from that, but I'm also not going to give men a haven here. If you are fucking up and not speaking properly, if you're changing your tone, if you feel the need to sun me or to put me in my place, then you need to sort that out within yourself. I am not your therapist. I am not your mother. I am not your daddy issues. And I think that a lot of men don't have to deal with their shit, especially in the music industry, because it's a boys' club of bad behavior.
Yan, do you have anything to contribute here before I have just 2 cents to add?
No, but I just wanted to say that I love how you said all of that. Like, you said that so beautifully, and it was well put. And I agreed with everything you said. I know we're talking more so about managers as far as management and artists, but I know, like, just working in music, I've definitely experienced that boys club. And I do feel the same as far as, like, I just feel like everything always is mansplained. And it's like, you could have a better idea. It's not even about who has the best idea. Like, I'm not trying to compete with you, but it's just like, if it's a better idea, like, why don't we just go with the better idea? Because it's more fruitful. It's not about whose idea it is. And it's just, there's always been this thing where it's like us versus y'all in certain rooms, or even just like when I've been to the studio, and it's kind of like I had to fight to get my ideas heard on the A&R side, and then some nigga says it's fire, then it's fire. And it's like, okay, I guess. And it's difficult. It's difficult to navigate. And if you don't really, like, if you're not sure about yourself and confident in your abilities as far as musically, it could be kind of challenging to pursue music with that dynamic, because it's just like, I know for me early on, it definitely made me want to take a step back from being in the studio mix and putting records together, because I just felt like I was never going to be heard. And it took a while before I felt comfortable in them spaces, just kind of talking my shit. So yeah, I hear you, and I agree with a lot of what you said. And I just love how you put everything. It was packaged well. I love that, and I hope a lot of men hear it and internalize it, because I just feel like, I don't know, it's not really going to change, because your homies aren't telling you that you're fucking up, and then the industry is rewarding you for fucking up, and it's like nobody checks. There's no checks and balances. So,
right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's great that you guys share these stories on this platform, so at least a few more people hear from your perspective. But I think two things. I think one, for the fellas, if you have a woman that you're working with, maybe allow her the space to give you some feedback, some authentic, genuine feedback, because you may not be aware of how your tone or certain things you're saying or doing are impacting her. So, and I know a lot of times a woman's not just going to say it, right? Maybe you just give her the space to give you some genuine feedback and remove your ego if possible when hearing the feedback. And then the other piece is, for fellas, once you become aware of the behavior and you spot it before another cat spots it, like check it, right? Like check it so you can educate, cats that are especially doing stuff that may be unconscious or just kind of embedded in us because of how we've grown up or what we've experienced in this environment, and all the things that Aaron was saying. So feedback and checking things in the moment can hopefully help stem some of these issues and prevent them from happening in the future. Payne, do you have any pet peeves outside of the one you talked about where the manager was essentially getting super involved in the art and telling the artists that they can't use your beats?
Yeah, I think when an artist restricts I think when a manager restricts their artists' creative endeavors or is just restrictive in general, that's problematic. I mean, the one time that I managed an artist, I wasn't restrictive. I was there to help. So if somebody came along and offered them something, my job was to maximize on it, unless it was incredibly terrible, which, rarely happened. If it was like, yo, we need you to play a show in Canada, but you have to pay for the travel, I'd be like, come on, bro, you don't want to do that. But, I see managers these days that are like, no, you can't use their beats. I mean, that happened to me. You can't use their beats. You got to use these producers. You have to work with this engineer. You have to, and then like when we throw a gender dynamic in the mix, I know a lot of it just in terms of general patriarchal paradigms. Yeah, those are embedded in our heads. But some people are predators, and their way of performing this predatory behavior is by jumping into the management artist dynamic. And you see it sometimes. This goes back to like, if there's a woman artist, usually it's a woman. If it's a woman artist, especially a young woman, and there's a male manager, and he's being incredibly restrictive on what she can and can't do, I'm looking at it like, why are you behaving as a jealous husband? You're her manager. What are you doing right now? Why can't she work with me? Are you threatened because I'm another man in the room? Like, this is twisted, and I hate to see, because even if it's just a dynamic and you're not actually physically violating any boundaries here with this woman that you're managing, you're still messing her career up. You're still losing because you bring a terrible energy. We don't want to be around it. And you're regulating what she can do, which is stunning her growth, because your ultimate goal isn't to let her be great. It's to control her. And I think this dynamic does play out in situations where it's non-predatory in the sexual sense, where you can have a heterosexual male manager and a heterosexual male client. And that manager is like, in my case, where the manager was saying, you can't use DJ Payne One's beats. It's like, there was no reason for that other than your ego and you want control. And if the artist comes with an opportunity, you're like, nah, don't do that. Do my idea. It's like, that's not how the fuck it works. If your artist comes to you with an opportunity that could work for them, your job is to consider it, maximize it, advise them on it, and then make sure that everything goes well for them and runs favorably for your client. That's it. It's so simple. But again, it's the barrier to entry of being a manager. Anyone can be a manager. You know, like you start making music and people are like, oh, you should let your uncle manage you. You should let your big brother manage you. You should let this guy down the street manage you. Just he has a degree in accounting. He should manage you. And it's like, I mean, hey, a lot of managers start out with nothing and knowing nothing and become great. But it's you know, I'd say it's the same kind of ratio of success to non-success that artists have.
So yeah, I've actually never experienced a manager like being restrictive when it comes to creative. So that's new. That's new to me. A pet peeve of mine is managers that don't take accountability when they fuck up, and they really try to pass it off to something else or someone else. And that to me, I mean, obviously it lacks integrity, but you know, I think that a lot of managers are always in fear of them losing their job. So they don't want to take accountability for a mistake. And I think it only makes problems a hell of a lot bigger. So I mean, it goes for anybody that's even not a manager. If you fuck up, you know, be the first one to own up to it and try to correct that mistake. Right? Don't try to pass it off to somebody else, or it wasn't me, or it's because this, or this person was supposed to email, or this person was supposed to do this. That's a big one for me, because I've seen that a lot over the years. There's just managers that don't want to admit that they made a mistake because they fear going back to the artist, letting them know that it was their fault. And I have an example, but I don't want to share this example. But I've seen that time and time again. So that
is a big one, Dave. I just want to pause on that for a second. I feel like there has to be a shift. Still, we talk about this all the time in the industry standard of like the artist management. Like, again, I don't do that 15-20% bullshit. Like, I'm not, because we're business partners and I'm bringing an entire team to manage you and years of experiences and relationships. So for me, a lot of times when managers won't own their bullshit, that fickle relationship that they have, if I am working for anybody, that I think that if I make one mistake, even if it's a big mistake and I'm out, then I don't want to work with them. There has to be fluidity within the relationship. There has to be autonomy within the relationship. I am not your employee. So if I make a mistake, that's a charge against me as well. I'm making a commission off of what you make. You have to give me permission to make mistakes and to say no to money. I say no to money all the time from my artists, and they respect that because they know if I'm saying no to the money, then there's a bigger opportunity we're trying to exploit. But I think the trust factor has to be increased with artist management teams. Like, if you're scared to lose your job, one, what type of artists are you working for? But two, that's a really weird, I feel like, poverty mentality that some people can't shirk. So I'm not blaming anybody on that. But if you feel like everything is lost, if I make a mistake and that keeps you from owning the mistakes, then that means that you're not failing enough to actually make a difference in the artist's career. Like, I'm failing daily because we're getting good fast, right? But if I don't have the freedom to do that, I feel like, one, you're probably lying to your artist a lot. That's sketchy. But then two, you're lying to yourself a lot. Like, all of us on this side making real money make mistakes all the time. It's not nothing to be like, yo, my bad, yo, my bad. I'm all day, every day, my bad, my bad, my bad. Apologizing is just, it's like breathing to me. It's just a regular part of my daily interaction. So for me, I just want to encourage managers, especially if you're a young manager, you will and should be making daily mistakes. Apologize, not because you made the mistake, but because of the hitch in business, and get your muscle proper. Like, get ready to apologize. If you can apologize fast and genuinely, you'll get so much further and people will trust you more. I trust anybody who's willing to come to me and tell me, yo, I actually did this thing. I shouldn't have, my bad. Then I'm like, bet, I wasn't even checking for that, you know, but young managers, especially, yo, like, get over yourself, but also true up your relationship with your artists. If they're threatening your position over that, you need to move. Like, what? They don't have that power.
Yeah, apologize and make it right if possible. Like the make it right piece is huge for me if there's still a window to do that. Yan, do you have any more pet peeves or complaints of just terrible managers? I got more on my list, but definitely allow you to tap back in.
A major one for me has to be follow-up, and this is from the curation point as well as trying to do A&R work. Like, I just feel like a lot of times I find myself reaching out to managers for, like, for example, for pub shots. And just for context, when we submit your pub shots for like a cover on a playlist, we have deadlines for that stuff. Like, it doesn't just happen on a Friday and then boom, Friday you're the cover of this playlist. Like, we need your stuff by like Monday, Tuesday, and if possible earlier. Like, if you can get that stuff to us 2-3 weeks in advance, the better. And it's like I find myself often chasing down managers just to get an email response, and it's like, did you not get access to the email? Like, what's happening? Like, I'm confused as to why you are not on top of getting your artist pub shots. And I'm sure from like a journalist perspective, that's frustrating as well. Like, I know a lot of the times these journalists end up just pulling pub shops from your social media, and a lot of artists think like, why can't you just do that? And it's like, well, on the industry side, that is a liability, because let's say like for Pandora, I literally can't do that. I can't just say, well, your manager is taking long, I'm just go to your Twitter and find a photo to use. Because if your management team decides, well, we didn't approve that photo, or that's not a good photo, now we have an issue legally because we used a photo that we did not have approval to use. So it's like, so the least you can do is email me back, because I'm trying to help your artist. So it's like, how concerned for your artist career are you actually if you're not responding to people who are trying to present opportunities to you? And even just with like beats too. Like, I know when I used to send beats around to different artists, and like you were saying, like the managers would prefer it comes through them, which I kind of don't really understand. Like, why would I send beats to a manager? But I know a lot of the times the managers would be managing those accounts. And
say it again. Why am I sending beats to a manager?
It just be like this long ass either no response, or they'll get back a year later or months later, like, oh, hey, I just saw that you, like, recently too, like, I know now that I'm with Pandora, like, I've been getting a lot of emails like, hey, I see that you're at Pandora now, I'm finally checking your email. Like, I just sent you that shit like a year ago. Like, the fuck? But it's not even them a lot of the time. It's the management team who is overseeing the email and just doesn't respond to shit. And it's like, even if you were to respond, I kind of don't really care for your response in that sense, because it's like, why do I care what you think about this beat that I'm trying to get your artist to get on? Like, I'm trying to get the artist on the beat because I know they would sound good on it. I don't know why you're denying or whatever, but like, that's not really, in my opinion, your lane. So it just goes back to like, even beyond just the follow-up, I just feel like there needs to kind of just be more of a, like, what lane are you in? Like, are you trying to be a manager? Are you trying to be a star? Like, what are you doing? Like, are you the A&R? Are you like, and I understand some managers play a lot of different hats, but I also understand that some of y'all don't need to be playing a lot of different hats because y'all not good at it. Like, you don't have good taste. I don't know who told you did, but, and I just feel like that is just, all of that altogether has just been so frustrating for me, just trying to work with artists, because the managers have been more of a barrier than they have been like an aid.
Yeah, I think communication should be on the top of the list of like things that you need to be able to do well in order to be a manager, right? You should be able to communicate well in all forms, whether it's text, phone calls, emails, etc. But I do think it's important for managers to figure out with their artists, like how they're going to move, like how they're going to operate, what I'm going to copy you on, what I'm going to shield you from. Like, artists and managers should be on the same page so that these issues don't arise. Like, I've never gotten involved really with the creative part. I didn't feel like that was my expertise in the beginning. And so I would I would have never tried to get in the middle of like sending beats. I might connect some people, introduce them to a producer, but once they start getting involved in the creative, I typically wasn't a part of that. But I think it's important for every manager and artist to establish like how they're going to work, because every artist manager relationship is different. But at the end of the day, communication is on the top of my list, because a manager has to be a great communicator, because you're going to fumble a lot of opportunities if you're not. And I see that right now. Like, there's an artist that I'm trying to get on my new podcast, and I know this artist. I could easily just reach out to him. But I wanted to be respectful of their relationship. I don't want him feeling weird. I don't want the manager feeling weird. So I'm going through him, and I'm pretty much done interacting. I'm just going to move on to somebody else. Not that maybe they don't care, because it's like they don't know what this podcast is, but it's just another opportunity that could have been cool, but just didn't happen just because of lack of communication. So
yeah, I think it's a damn shame too that maybe it's a matter of managers feeling like they are in a precarious position and then overcompensating by doing too damn much, or that's just the expectation now that the manager is just a one-stop shop for everything music business related. But I know that we've discussed this before on the podcast, where we as managers, obviously, you, Dame, and you, Aaron, a lot more than me, because I've only really done it once. But you as managers really go above and beyond what the role of a manager, what the traditional role and what the limits and boundaries of a manager should be. And because now there's this expectation that managers do so damn much, and their positions are precarious because the artist can just fire them whenever, pretty much, unfortunately, depending on the contract you have, they end up, out of fear, out of sense of obligation, out of just playing to the narrative and the traditions and whatever they believe their role should be, end up, like Yan was saying, A&Ring. Why are you A&Ring? Why are you listening to beats and saying, nah, I'm not sending these to my artist? That's not your job. That's not why they hired you. If they get signed to a label, you're not going to have that job anymore. They're going to be actual A&Rs. And realistically, you're just going to be delivering a final product, not a beat to them anyway. So that doesn't make sense. Why are you saying who they can and can't work with? You're not managing their social life. Why are you, answering their emails? They should be able to look at opportunities for themselves if they're coming to them, not to you. If don't tell them, hey, everything has to go through me. That doesn't make sense either, because the artist is out there networking and leading with their brand and leading with their personality. So they're going to get different opportunities than you and as the manager are. So just allow that to happen and manage it. That's literally what your title says. Manage the flow of opportunity.
I think that's the issue, though. My bad, Dave. I think the issue is that there isn't like a class or a crash course for new era management. So like 30 years ago, even 20 years ago, an artist gets signed, they go to a label, you're just managing the incoming money and opportunities. Currently, since I've been in the industry, I've been in 12 years, it's been a shift towards independence, right? Even at the first top of my career, we were still looking to get signed to an indie label. We didn't want a major, but we wanted an indie label. And then we went at it on our own, started our own label, whatever. But with the first rock band that I was managing, it was just figure this shit out. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I think that's why I did, like you said, develop where I'm giving back a lot more and I'm interested in invested in a lot more. But I think because there is no formalized training, there are a couple of school programs at PWIs like University of New Haven. I'm speaking there at the top of the year. There's Belmont, but there's only a handful of places where you can get a formalized training, right? So I think a big issue is that if you're not really an entrepreneur and you step into a manager's role, you can't eat what you kill, right? Like I'm the type of manager that it doesn't matter what artist I have, we're winning. Like that's just it. If I believe in you, we're winning because I am an entrepreneur. I eat what I kill. I can hunt right? Like I can hunt. It doesn't matter. But a lot of managers, what they do is they become village people and they're eating what the artist kills. And so they just sit there. They're just kind of excited to be a part. My biggest manager pet peeve is managers who are just excited to be there. Like, you are an assistant. Go away. Like, you're an assistant with like real power. And that's what the issue is. There are a lot of managers who are just assistants. So if they don't feel like answering an email for a week or 2 or 3, they won't, because it's no value to them. If Yan needs a picture for an editorial playlist, that doesn't, in their head, they don't see how that's making them more money. So that's not a fast email, but it's dumb because that's what so many people are aspiring to get. I think we get some of the biggest problems with managers of artists who are making a living. So the manager's just scraping by and they're excited to be there, but they're not expanding their skills. To me, some of the most fascinating managers are those of independent artists on the come up trying to make money. And then those of like A-level artists who have made a trend of their wins, right? The middle is shit right now. There's a lot of people making money and managing people who aren't doing anything. And that's, to me, is where a lot of the condescension comes from. That's where a lot of the entitlement, that's where it's so strange to me. But I get it because it's like, oh, y'all got lucky with the internet era. You were in the proper proximity. I'm not saying lucky as in you made it. Anybody who can make money in this industry had to have a little bit of skill. But a lot of times people get lucky and stick with somebody who had a little bit of skill or a viral moment, and they're just here and they're regular and they're like, oh yeah, I'm a music manager. It's like, yo, put me in a room with you for a week. Who's eating? Me. And I think that needs to be a part of this rhetoric, is that managers have to be phenomenal entrepreneurs. Because again, I've dropped off 5 artists this year. My company is making more money. Like, one monkey ain't stopping this show. Artists gonna come and go. We gonna make money on this side. But a lot of managers, if their artist is gone, they stuck. And I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah, I know there's definitely a lot of people that are just excited about the title and not really interested in doing the work. So we'll do like we'll give advice. Maybe we'll go around and give 1 or 2 pieces of advice for up and coming managers. But I want to see if this is a bias of mine or if you guys have had the same experience. So anytime a manager's name is like an artist's name, I'm skeptical of that manager. Like
factual. When they have like a flashy artist name, you're like, oh yeah, shit, this dude is about to be Hollywood.
If their name isn't their government name or something close to it or a derivative of, I'm typically skeptical of that manager, unless they've been a successful artist themselves. Right? Have you guys had a similar experience? Because I definitely.
Yep. Because a lot of them were artists, so then it becomes a conflict of interest.
Well, see, that's one of my pet peeves. Actually, kind of is branches from that. Like, I don't like managers who are actively pursuing their own artist career. It's one thing, like, if you're already successful, you're trying to manage it. Even that, honestly, I kind of don't think that's a good move. But especially when you're not a well-known artist and you're essentially in the same position as your artist, trying to create a career a lot of times off the backs of what your artist is doing, which is what I'm saying a lot of. It's like a manager will have a relationship with the DSP curators, and it's like, hey, but did you check out my music? Like, bro, like, what are you doing? Like, there's somebody right now, I promise you, this person has sent me like 6 emails in the last 3 weeks. Did you check out my EP? Did you check out my EP? Like, you have not asked me one time that I check out the artist that you're managing. Like, wow. I don't care about your EP, bro.
So managers even got to be careful, even with like free stuff that their artists get. Like, that's not always for you, right? A lot of times that's not for you. So don't.
It's for me.
Nah, it's not. It's not for
because they not gonna wear the shirt. They not gonna endorse the little speaker. It's for me. If I'm answering this dumbass email 3 times and my artists don't even know about it, dang, it's for me.
Nah, for me, I'm very careful about whether it's free, whatever it is. I mean, most of the time you get it. Like, most of the time, the brand or whoever, they're gonna bless the whole team, so it's not a problem, you know. But I'm super careful about, like, hey, this stuff. One, it doesn't really matter to me, and I can't think of something that was free that I was like, man, I got to get that. But But I think you even got to be careful with that, with those relationships. Like, hey, take care of the artist first. If you sense that the relationship has gotten to a point where, you know, you feel like it's comfortable and it's not going to create any negative energy asking for one yourself, then, you know, feel free. But I think that you always got to put, you know, the artist first, and just, again, most time you're going to get it. Like, they're going to bless the whole team. But, you know, I'm
you
just
must be talking about nice stuff. I'm talking about all these dumbass hats and hoodies that people swear we need. And I'm like, I don't need one more distributor sending me some weak ass holiday pack. Let me not say that, because if it's cool, send it. But these distributors, I'm like, we do not care about your shirt. This is a Toltec shirt. Who designed this?
No, yeah, I'm definitely talking about. I'm definitely talking about stuff that you would actually want. So I know we're getting close to the end of this podcast.
I got some dope shirts sent to me last night by Jesse NYC. So shout out to them. But I'll probably just wear one on a podcast or that's how I show the love back. But I'm not managing anyone, so I feel you.
There you go. We can just go around really quick and give a little bit of advice to up and coming managers of, like, you know, we talked about our pet peeves, but, you know, maybe just one or two things that they need to be equipped with, or that they need to do in order to be successful as a manager. Yan, would you like to start?
I mean, I personally, just from my experience in the past, I would just say, like, really work on developing a solid relationship with your artist to where they feel comfortable making decisions without you, and you feel comfortable making decisions about them, so that it's not this weird energy like we were talking about earlier, to where it's like, if I make a mistake, I might lose my job. Like, I feel like I've dealt with a lot of that as far as like the artist manager dynamics. And I just feel like if you just have a tight relationship, like, you need to spend that time before you become their manager, just really getting to know them and understanding whether or not you guys are compatible as, like, just partners, friends, before you even get into a manager artist relationship. Because if you guys are compatible and you build that solid relationship, it shows up in so many other ways, and you kind of, like, alleviate yourself from a lot of the problems that we're talking about today.
Indeed. Aaron, you want to go next?
I would say care about what you do. I think that's like really important, because if you care, that will carry you through. That's going to cause you to research. That's going to cause you to look out for people, even if it's detrimental to you sometimes. I think that there's a sacrificial nature of being a good manager that a lot of people don't have. And I feel like if you're not willing to sacrifice for people, it may not be the role for you. There may be another role that has your name on it, but management is a thankless job. I will tell anybody thinking about getting into it, don't. And then if you ask me again, I'm going to tell you don't again. And then if you ask me a third time, I'm going to ask you what your motivation is. But I don't think anybody should be getting into management unless you really, really know what you're signing up for. You may want to start a marketing firm. You may want to start a PR situation, but it's like, as a manager, you're not going to get paid a lot of times, especially if you're just starting out. So you're signing up to be an industry volunteer. And again, you could just go intern for the right person and then get a position. So like, if you want to manage, figure out why, and then decide if management is the best role for you to step into. A lot of us, it fell into our laps. But for me, it's the least favorite part of my job. And I say that regularly. It's like, management is not for the faint of heart. That's why I have a team now that does pretty much everything. I've taken on a more executive role of my company, but as a young manager, you have to care. And if you're not willing to sacrifice your heart on a daily basis, then maybe management isn't for you.
Yeah, no, just quick input on what you just said. Like, it is thankless, I would say 95% of the time. Like, Big Ja thanks me all the time, and it's I never thought I'd be so positively impacted by words. Like, you know, I'm normally coming up, like, if you say thank you, yeah, I'm appreciative, but it doesn't really impact me much. I think it only impacted me because I never heard it before. So I was surprised. So I think there are artists need to hear this too, because I think artists need to show more appreciation for the people that are doing the work, you know, and not only, because you might get a big win every so often, and maybe you might say thank you, but they're doing work every single day, a lot of shitty work too that, you know, we don't really want to do. So they should be appreciative and thankful for that. So if you have somebody on your team that's doing something positive for you, thank them frequently. Payne, what do you got?
I would say just live it and breathe it the same way everybody else in the industry does. I think a lot of managers, unfortunately, like artists, are happy with their title and nothing more, rather than professional development and personal development. But really, professional development should be the priority. So, also, it's great as a manager to show up. You know, if there are in-person conferences and networking and professional development opportunities, you know, show up and network with the people around there. You'll bring yourself and your artist clients more opportunities, but also reading, listening to podcasts, signing up for online mentorship,
joining the Excellence Academy,
really taking notes from established managers who are doing what you want to do at a high level. Just, you know, develop yourself. Same way artists have to learn Pro Tools, and same way producers, you know, teach themselves or take lessons in music theory. You got to do the same thing.
Yeah, so I would agree with everything that you guys have said. To me, it comes down to continuous education, which Payne, you touched on a ton. Working on your organizational skills, your communication skills, maybe even take an emotional intelligence course. I think everybody should take an emotional intelligence course. But if you don't know what that is, we don't have time to go into it right now, but Google it, take a course. I think it would help you immensely. Artists, it would help you too. I think it would help everybody, but managers specifically. You know, it is a tough role. It's a role that has evolved over time. Aaron mentioned it, like, you know, today's managers are essentially business developers / entrepreneurs. So yeah, there needs to be more structure, but I don't think that's coming anytime soon. I'm even skeptical of some of I don't know the programs that you mentioned, Aaron. I'm not familiar with their curriculum, but just off top, I'd be skeptical of it if it's taught at a, you know, college.
Well, I like University of New Haven because my assistant came through their music management program, and she is one of the most well-equipped interns that we had, which is why I hired her as my personal assistant. And then next week she starts with BYOD. So she's going 50-50 between me and BYOD. So you've had experience with Braden. So I like.
Oh, that's where she went? Okay.
Yeah. And that's why I want to get involved in their program, to give them some more of an in-depth look. But I'm with you. I'm skeptical of college programs teaching common sense.
Unless they're pulling in people like you, right? Like if it's a program that's pulling in people that are on the ground, like living it, breathing it now, because obviously the industry evolves so quickly. You have to have people that are in there that are currently doing the work, or you're going to be teaching stuff that was relevant 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. So anyway, I think this was a cool episode. Yan, thank you very much for joining us. Do you want to let people know how they can reach you, or do you want people reaching you?
Of course. Thank you guys for having me. This is a really great conversation. You guys can all find me on Twitter, Instagram. Everything is Yan Snead, YANSNEAD.
So now this is a selfish question, but what I know, we're actually working on an R&B project. If there are other R&B artists can they submit music to you? How do you find music for curation at Pandora?
So generally I do have in my Twitter bio, I think it might be on my Instagram too, my link tree, there is a submission link, so you can submit. It's pretty in-depth too, so I can know like what the focus tracks are, if it's a EP or an album. Outside of that though, a lot of the times I'm just getting pitches from distribution companies or managers. Like I'm pretty available. You can tweet me.
Okay.
I'm not a super gatekeeper.
Dope. I'll be sure to follow up. All right, Payne, we can close it out.
Yeah, we appreciate you tuning in. We want to thank Yan Snead, our special guest for the day, and we'll be back same time, same place next week, right here on the Music Entrepreneur Club podcast. Peace.
Peace.